evening, everyone, and welcome to our November Wakulla Springs virtual speaker series. As a reminder, all audience members are muted for this presentation. Please use the Q&A tool to post any questions you might have for our panel, and these questions will be answered at the end of the talk. I'm Renee, and I'm on the board of the Friends of Wakulla Springs, and we bring you this free series so we all can come together and share the amazing natural and cultural resources the Springs have to offer. Tonight, we have a very special program brought to you by Casey McKinley. I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Amy Connell, our park manager, who will be introducing you to Casey. Amy and Casey.
Thank you, Renee. Good evening. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Casey McKinley, the project director for the Woodville Karst Plain Project, or WKPP. Casey and his team hold a research permit to map, explore, and document underwater caves and passageways that are otherwise inaccessible. Through their work, we are better able to tell the story of Wakulla Springs and also work towards better protections for the spring by realizing the most sensitive areas of our watershed. They have also assisted with archaeological research by documenting artifacts that are preserved beneath the water. Casey has been an avid and passionate diver and underwater explorer for more than 30 years. With well over 1,000 dives under his belt, he has been involved in exploration projects all over the world in countries such as China, New Zealand, Mexico, Australia, Italy, the Philippines, Greece, and the Solomon Islands. He has explored more than 450 shipwrecks and was involved in planning and executing some of the most logistically complicated underwater cave expeditions in the world, including the longest penetrations into Florida's Wakulla Spring cave system at more than 5 miles, which required an amazing 28 hours underwater. I know that you're anxious to hear more. I'm glad now to turn the show over to Casey so that he can share with us photos, video, and stories from his explorations and adventures. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Renee. We'll do a screen share here. Let's see. Renee, I have a host disabled participant screen sharing warning. So, let's see. Okay. I think we're looking good. Good evening, friends of Wakulla Springs from near and far. A brief word that Tropical Storm Eta has moved on to the northeast, and with it all the rain. So we're glad we could join you this evening. As a cave diver, one of the things we prefer not to have a lot of, especially in Florida, is rain. As the more rain we get, the visibility in the cave systems becomes reduced, and we can't dive for months at a time. But hopefully this will be the last storm of the season, and we're looking forward to a good fall and winter season of diving activity and new discoveries for sure. So again, thanks to Renee and Cynthia for the opportunity to speak with everyone this evening. And of course, thanks to Amy for the introduction and the support from her staff at Wakulla Springs State Park, which makes our job of exploration and research easier. And we appreciate that a lot. Because tonight we have a, let's see. Because tonight we have a somewhat diverse group that perhaps extends beyond Florida I thought it would be good to cover some of the basics first before we dive in, so to speak. The who, where, how, and why are usually good items to kind of familiarize those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with these particular locations where we're doing these dives and research, and who the WKPP organization is. I've had the privilege of working with the WKPP for almost 30 years now. The organization is a volunteer 501c3. We have roughly 75 members, and over the years in the Wakulla cave system and surrounding cave systems in Florida, we've logged roughly 8,500 dives or 400,000 hours. The primary goals of the project are to explore, survey, document, educate, and assist with ongoing research in this exciting and dynamic cave system. It's one of the most researched, studied, and monitored cave systems in the world. And we have the privilege of partnering with researchers, resource managers, landowners, and CSO groups like Friends of Wakulla Springs, who work to educate the public and those responsible for managing these resources, ultimately to protect them for future generations. And we recognize that the WKPP plays a small role as a member of the team, so to speak, and our contribution hopefully contributes to ultimately protection efforts for these systems and preserving them for future generations. So it's been a privilege the past 30 years to be able to dive these systems. We are under special use permit. We recognize that, and we appreciate all the support we get from our research partners. So moving on to sort of familiarize those of you that may not know where these cave systems are located. What you can see here on my screen is a zoomed in 30,000 foot level image. You can see Tallahassee up here on the top part of the map. This is the Gulf of Mexico down here. And this green blob here that I'll zoom in on shortly is actually the Wakulla cave system. And the Wakulla cave system is located within the 450 square mile Woodville Karst Plain, which, if you can envision a large limestone plain or slab of limestone riddled with springs and sinkholes and karst windows and all sorts of unique geologic features extending roughly from the south of Tallahassee down to the Gulf of Mexico. And within this karst plain are more than 445 miles of mapped cave systems. Of that, the Wakulla cave system is currently mapped at more than 35 miles. So it definitely makes up the bulk of the caves currently documented within the karst plain, and one of the most extensive cave systems in the world. Over the years, the WKPP has contributed to about 31 miles of that 45-mile total, including 22 miles explored and surveyed below an average depth of 190 feet. So a lot of deep diving, long dives, team diving, and exciting discoveries over the past 30 years, including more than 2 miles of cave discovered and surveyed in 2019 alone. So we're looking forward to a dry season coming up and additional discoveries to share with the group at some point in the future. If we zoom in a little bit more, that green blob begins to take shape, and you can more clearly see the 35 miles of explored and surveyed cave passage. Within this cave system, there's 27 currently known entrances, the most famous of those entrances being Wakulla Springs. The other entrances, so to speak, would be characterized as karst windows. So areas on top of the cave system that have been eroded away over thousands of years, exposing the cave. Some also refer to those as sinkholes. but it's really an incredible cave system. It is what we would consider the mammoth cave of underwater cave systems, with billions of gallons of fresh water flowing through it each day. And if you kind of look up here to the northwest, the cave system will trend south-southeast, and the elevation up here is a little bit higher, down here is a little bit lower, so this is one big flow path, and some would characterize it as a freshwater superhighway. So a lot of water moving through this cave system as it travels downstream to Wakulla Springs and eventually on to the Gulf of Mexico. If we zoom in a little bit and look at the different sections of the system, the Wakulla section has probably the highest profile, naturally. The geological significance, cultural significance, the ecology of Wakulla Springs and the state park, the economic significance, a very rich history, not only for cave exploration, but culturally. And then, of course, being sort of at the downstream end, it's also a very vulnerable system to everything that is occurring upstream. From water withdrawals or water treatment, from septic tanks, lots of different water issues impacting Wakulla Springs and the water flowing into the cave system. So understanding it and contributing to the research that protects it is a main priority of ours. Looking above the main vent or the main opening of Wakulla Springs, it's clearly a very impressive site, both in terms of the scale, the depth, the discharge that occurs here at the spring each and every day in the millions of gallons of water, starting here at the head spring, forming the Wakulla River, and that water flowing down to meet the Gulf of Mexico. There's, in addition to cave divers at Wakulla Springs, we have the rare yet adventurous cave exploration manatee. It is a very rare species, but we enjoy seeing them as we conduct our exploration dives at Wakulla, and they've been welcome visitors in recent years. So always exciting to see them kind of moving around the spring basin and curious about the divers, probably as much as we are about them. So moving from the spring basin into the Wakulla cave system, the passages are extremely large. It's a very majestic cave system, many different passages, many different sources of water feeding into the cave system here. But probably what is most impressive is the extensive monitoring that's done here at Wakulla Springs. There's monitors strategically positioned within several of the passages contributing water to the main cave system. And literally, these monitoring systems are taking the pulse of Wakulla Springs each and every day. Florida Geological Survey does a great job managing that and recording that data and then using that data as part of resource management decisions. If we move out into the spring basin, clearly the archaeological significance of Wakulla Springs cannot be overstated. Researchers have confirmed that visitors have been coming to Wakulla Springs for thousands of years and will be coming for thousands of years more. These are remnants that clearly illustrate that, and there's active research ongoing at Wakulla Springs to document and catalog this. If we shift north from Wakulla Springs here, up to the northwestern section of the cave system, or the Emerald Sink section, the number of karst windows up in this area is roughly a dozen, including Emerald Sink. And you also have several entrances into the cave system up here in Apalachicola National Forest, managed by U.S. Forest Service. This is water that's again flowing downstream towards Wakulla Springs. This section over here, downstream from Emerald Sink, within the Wakulla Springs State Park, is a fabulous hiking trail that'll take you through all the karst windows in this section. It's really a beautiful sight. And when the weather conditions are dry and the cave system is relatively clear, air clear visibility here looking up from Emerald Sink at a depth of about 50 feet is really an impressive sight, and a sight that cave divers enjoy very much. If we head south from the Emerald section down here to what we would call the middle section of the Wakulla cave system down into the River Sinks area, we have roughly another dozen karst windows, and it's also a really beautiful section that can be accessed via the hiking trails. This is a great shot taken about a year ago from Upper River Sink. It's absolutely beautiful up top, and the water was clear and is equally beautiful from below. Sections of this part of the cave system tend to be a little bit darker because you're getting dark water contributions from the Apalachicola National Forest area, but it's clearly kind of a raw and adventurous type section within the cave system. And from here, the cave system starts to expand in size as the volume of water also increases as it flows south towards Wakulla Springs. And if we move a little bit south and a little bit a little bit south and a little bit east, we find ourselves in the feral tract for the Wakulla Caves, which was recently acquired in 2019 as an extension of Wakulla Springs State Park. And if we travel from Wakulla Springs up into this section, straight line is roughly 3 miles to the northwest. If we were to instead take the long way around and travel through the cave system from Wakulla Springs, it would be about 7 miles. With water averaging about a mile a day through the cave system, everything entering in here from the feral tract area, contributing to the main cave system, that water will find itself at Wakulla Springs in roughly 7 days. So a strategically significant acquisition in terms of water protection. And as you can see up here, the small map to the left, the pieces coming together to protect not only the lands directly above the cave system, but those lands significant to water contribution coming into the cave system. So Wakulla Springs State Park, Wakulla State Forest, the Wakulla Cave section on the newly acquired feral property, and then additional Wakulla Springs State Park property here, and then up into Apalachicola National Forest. So many have been hard at work putting this jigsaw puzzle together in an effort to protect the waters flowing to Wakulla Springs. Over here to the right is a impressive LiDAR map, or an elevation radar map, that clearly shows a lot of the depressions, karst windows, sinkholes within this property and their proximity to the cave system, and thus the water coming underneath the feral property into the cave system and its significance highlighted this way. So a strategic acquisition, but also at the same time some beautiful karst features on the surface of the property, including many karst windows and sinkholes, some of them with known connections already into the main cave system, several that require further exploration, and we're looking forward to contributing to further understanding of the passageways beneath this property. Active exploration from Meeting House Sink, which is sort of the premier sinkhole or karst window on the property, and then introducing Cal Jameson for those of you that may not know Cal. Cal's an honorary WKPP exploration diver and has been a great asset to us over more than 20 years, helping us with landowners and just a great resource to help narrow down exploration objectives in this area, and always great to have Cal on the team. So into the feral track, into the Wakulla Caves, and how are we currently accessing this particular section from existing known entrances? To date, we have been primarily diving from the Turner Sink entrance into the cave system. Turner Sink is the southernmost sinkhole or karst window into the cave system before it stays underground for more than 7 miles, emerging at Wakulla Springs. So Turner Sink is the southernmost entrance. It doesn't typically look that impressive from the surface. It doesn't look overly impressive from below, as this is the view looking out from the cave system into the basin of the sinkhole. But I tell you what, as you travel just a short distance upstream and downstream, the impressive nature and the scale of this passageway is a sight to behold for sure. This is an image taken just a few months ago by team photographer David Ray, and it really highlights the upstream section of Turner Sink as it begins to approach the intersection with the passageways coming in from the feral tract. And I could describe it, but maybe let's just watch a short video and that'll tell the story a little bit better than I can. Dive team has traveled upstream from Turner Sink towards the feral property to the northeast. The size of this passageway is very impressive. As you can probably notice, there's a greenish tint or a tannin colored tint passageway here. We're approaching an intersection, and as we turn right into the feral passageway heading to the northeast, you'll quickly see the clarity of the water and the color of the water changes almost instantly. As this passageway heads deeper into the aquifer, probably the best way to say it. So over the past 10 years or so, a big part of data capture for the Woodville Karst Plain project has been photo and video. And we prioritize that now along the lines of our cave survey data and then additional cave system related data that we may collect on biota or other dimensional elements. So we made this investment to really be able to bring back imagery and video and be able to share that not only with the resource managers to more effectively describe or illustrate what we're seeing, but also it resonates very well with the public to be able to see what lies beneath these pieces of property and what these cave systems look like, just in terms of the scale. And a lot of this is very specialized video equipment. So specialized cameras, large format cameras, special propulsion systems, large lighting, because these passageways are very dark and very large in some cases. And of course, The divers also have to be specialized in being able to effectively operate and manage this hardware in addition to being cave divers. So doing so takes a enhanced skill set, so to speak, but it's also very challenging, and refining this is something that we've worked very hard on in recent years. And we hope to capture more of this data in higher definition formats and to be able to share this with you in the future. So this is an image of a large video camera mounted onto a propulsion system. And as you can see here, 3 divers, 6 lights, very large passageway. It takes a lot to light things up. And some of the equipment we're using, for example, here, these video lights, each of these video lights is the equivalent of 25 100-watt incandescent bulbs. So in this image here, the 2 divers out front each have 2 of these lights, and it's still struggling to light up that cave passageway. So with 4 of these lights out front, you're basically using the equivalent of 100 100-watt light bulbs in an effort to light up these passageways, which are very large and in some cases very dark. But as we work on that, the results will get better and better, and it's really something that is impressive to see, especially on large format. And we hope to have that to share with you at some point in the future as well. So specialized lighting, specialized equipment, and specialized divers to really pull it all together. Another thing we've been working very hard on in the past few years is also gathering more data as we move through the cave system. Doing that in parallel with everything else. Technology is helping some with that, especially with being able to sonar profile these cave passageways. This is a nice example of a sonar profile upstream entering here at Turner Sink. Over here is the feral tract that we've been describing this evening. And this would be Greenlee Estates. So as you can see, as you're moving upstream, you really get a good idea of sort of the width of the cave passageway underneath these neighborhoods and adjacent to these pieces of property. And in addition to the data, which gives us, in some cases, width and dimensional elements, those elements then being used in water modeling to calculate volume and flow, which resource managers will use. It's an impressive sight to see, especially when you put it in relation to surface features like roadways and the widening of roadways and where those widening efforts may impact the cave system. There's also the cool factor. So it looks pretty cool, quite honestly. So we're capturing more and more of this data on each and every dive, in addition to photos and videos, and it really helps pull together the big picture. And when the cave conditions align and the equipment aligns and the dive team aligns, the results can be quite impressive. But I'll let the video speak for itself. Into this section upstream from Turner Sink and over here near the feral tract, the green lines you see are the main cave passageway that has been documented. And each of these red lines you see are new discoveries just in the past 12 months. So imagine hiking, for example, in a canyon. So let's characterize the Wakulla cave system as a big canyon. And as you hike through this canyon, you notice perhaps smaller canyons worth exploring off to the side, and then you return to explore those. And that's actively what we're doing. We're actively exploring these new sections, these new leads, to see where they might go and what discoveries they might hold for us. And as explorers, that's really what we love to do. And when it all comes together, sometimes the initial section of cave may not be that impressive, but as you move through the cave system, it opens up to reveal something truly exciting. So this was just April 26, a few months ago, exploring one of these new sections upstream from Turner Sea. This is actual exploration footage in a small yet obscure opening on the side of the cave wall. We began looking further and further. In some cases, very small. Not a lot of flow, not a lot of discharge at first, but as we keep moving through, sometimes the cave system reveals itself. Opening up a little bit larger, and then what's around the next corner. So we're now beneath the feral track here. The depth has dropped to more than 100 feet. There's significant tannic layering on the top section of the cave passageway. And then some of these rooms are very impressive in size. And this is basically exploration into the freshwater aquifer. Not all cave system exploration efforts lead to these type of discoveries, but if you don't go, you'll never know. So persistence pays, as they say. And with that, I'd like to kind of close things out by again thanking Friends of Wakulla Springs, the Wakulla Springs Alliance, Florida Park Service, Amy and her team, Florida Geological Survey, Dr. John Arthur and Clint Proudhout, Northwest Florida Water Management District, Kathleen Coates and her team, U.S. Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife, St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge, Dale Schroeder, and of course, our WKPP honorary explorer, Cal Jameson, for their support and help. Video and images from the WKPP team, huge thanks to all of them for their contributions, and we look forward to future discoveries and sharing more with you as conditions allow. So thank you again for your time this evening.
Casey, thank you for taking us underwater with you. That was really cool. I know everyone enjoyed it. I want to say we did have a couple of people comment that they weren't able to see the screen share, though I know it was going out. So I just want to remind folks that if you weren't able to see the photos and video that Casey was sharing, you will be able to go back to the Friends of Wakulla Springs webpage in the coming days and see the recorded version, which will have everything available to you. So we do have some questions coming in, and if you have some additional questions, look at the bottom of your screen. When you move your mouse, you should see a Q&A box, and you can type your questions in there. So we will start reading through these. Casey, we've had some questions about how you got into diving.
I got into diving living in North Florida more than 30 years ago, and it was such a long drive down to the ocean that traveling just a short distance out to the local springs in the Gainesville area and North Central Florida area was quick and easy. And I know, Amy, you've managed many state parks with springs in them over the years, and you can only do so many spring dives before you need to go to the bottom and see where the cave systems start. So one thing led to another, and cave diving just seemed to take hold, and the rest is history, as they say. So it's been exciting over all these years, and also be able to travel around the world and see different cave systems and share what we do here in Florida with them as well. So Wakulla Springs is known around the world, if you weren't aware of that, but I think you are.
And someone points out that this seems like very dangerous work, and they're certainly right. But what motivates you to keep doing this work that you're doing?
Well, it's not uncommon to get a question about the high risk nature of what we do. However, I also like to point out that, it's relative to, the amount of training and the amount of teamwork and the equipment and the preparation. So like anything that might be higher risk, it can be managed, and great results can be accomplished if you stay disciplined and you're fortunate enough to dive with a great team of people. And that's been the case with the WKPP for many years. And we keep safety as a #1 priority, and we look to continue to leverage that going forward to accomplish greater things. So
great. Well, you have definitely whet the appetite of a lot of people for more videos of cave exploration. So can you give some suggestions as to where people can go to see more videos of WKPP or other cave explorations?
We do post some of the videos out to our Facebook page. So WKPP-Woodville Karst Plain Project should be easy enough to look up. That would probably be the best location for that. And then we also have a YouTube page where we have posted some videos over the years, including Wakulla and Sally Ward Spring and some of the other systems out at Fast Lane Divers, which is located on YouTube. So both of those sources can be good for historical videos. What I shared tonight really has never been published, so some of them we don't. We save some of the good stuff for special events, but as we do more exploration and capture more video, we will release it usually at these 2 locations.
Okay, we've got some questions about your equipment. One person is asking about the propulsion gear that you mentioned, or wondering if it was just the current pushing you along. And another person was curious about the line of rope in some of the images. Can you talk about the diving equipment a little bit?
Sure. The WKPP recognized early on, when it was formed in the early 1990s, that due to the depth and the distance and the amount of work required to physically swim through these cave systems, that it would be very difficult to explore without propulsion. So using the propulsion systems that we use, a lot of them are designed to our specifications, are really required to move people and equipment efficiently and safely through the cave passageways. In some ways we look at it as not only as an exploration tool, but a safety tool. And it really cuts down on the exertion of the diver. As far as the guideline that is established in the cave system, the guideline is usually installed during exploration, and it serves 2 purposes. #1 is the safety line to travel back to the entrance or to the surface, but it's also used as a tool to survey the cave passageway. The guideline is installed and it's knotted every 10 feet, so the cave surveyor will use the guideline measurements in addition to depth and compass heading to produce the basic data needed to create the cave maps to know where the caves are. And then these guidelines are typically left permanently inside the cave systems to follow on future dives and future exploration.
Okay, and how do you prepare for such a long dive? Eating and resting could, I imagine, be pretty difficult on a 28-hour dive.
Yeah, well, to be fair, full disclosure, we don't always do 28-hour dives, but in some cases, that's where we find ourselves preparing for very long dives. And I compare it when asked usually to preparing, for a long marathon, for example. So usually starts days in advance. You want to eat the right things and get plenty of rest and kind of work up to doing that long of a dive or staying up for that many hours and having to be focused for that many hours. So it's a balance of both. So physical training, rest, eating the right things, and then when the dive day comes around, we usually have a great team of people that help us out and keep us on schedule through the long hours, and then ultimately all the way back to the surface. So it's a bit of a marathon, but it's also exciting at the same time.
Well, we've had a few questions about that unusual poster behind your right shoulder. Could you tell us a little bit about that creature behind you?
That is my Creature from the Black Lagoon poster that was given to me by a friend, fellow cave explorer, and he had it for a long period of time in recognition of Creature of the Black Lagoon being filmed at Wakulla Springs many years ago. So that's the official movie poster. I always thought it was a nice reminder of Wakulla Springs, so I keep it on the wall next to the less exciting cave map, but it adds a little color to the office, and yep, so that's it.
So I imagine you haven't encountered that type of creature underwater, but some people are curious about what critters you have found in the caves.
Well, on some of those 28-hour dives, you begin to see things towards the end, but I haven't seen the Creature from the Black Lagoon officially yet. In the Florida cave systems, we see some creatures, of course, albino crayfish or freshwater catfish, blind catfish, eels. But aside from that, we don't typically see a lot of significant creatures within the cave system. At the same time, we see a lot of activity, usually in the spring basins. So different types of freshwater fish, and sometimes manatees, sometimes the friendly alligator that will show up and catch us off guard. But overall, a lot of rocks and fresh water and cave is really what we're kind of focused on.
So someone is asking about exploration north of Emerald Sink.
Exploration north of Emerald Sink, across the county line, so to speak, up into Leon County. There are areas of opportunity up there beneath Apalachicola National Forest. The U.S. Forest Service is one of your adjacent landowner partners that I'm sure you work with. The contributions coming into the cave system up there are not well documented because a lot of the emphasis has been on the southern part of the cave system in Wakulla Springs for many years. So there's probably a lot to be discovered up there, and we're currently discussing with U.S. Forest Service the opportunity to do that. And then when we do, all that data will also be shared with the downstream partners. So exploration for the future.
Great. So there were, I'm going through a lot of questions. Everyone's very curious about what
I see.
I wanted to ask you about what additional areas you would like to see protected based on the work that you're doing.
Well, the water dynamics at Wakulla Springs have always been an interesting, it's a very complex system. The plumbing at Wakulla Springs and in the Woodville Karst Plain is very complex. Without a doubt, the strategic acquisitions that are being made, Farrell property, for example, the Wakulla Caves, and the upstream portions are going to go a long way towards water protection, especially since everything flows down towards Wakulla Springs. Obviously, there's septic tank issues both to the south and to the north, and depending on how the water is moving, they can each impact Wakulla. So I think there are smart researchers out there identifying what should be acquired, and if we can contribute and further enhance those decisions with good observational data from within the cave system, we're very happy to do that. So I have to defer to the researchers and Wakulla Springs Alliance, Florida Geological Survey, USGS, all them looking at better ways to protect Wakulla Springs. And I think they are doing a good job of that, but there's more work to do for sure.
Certainly. We're getting a lot of questions about people wanting to be involved. Someone mentioned that, or pointed out that you mentioned you have a volunteer organization, but obviously the equipment and the camera production and the flashlights, it costs a lot. So how is WKPP funded, and is there a way that our viewers can help?
The WKPP is funded internally, so all our membership covers their own expenses. We occasionally will accept contributions from outside sources, but historically we've referred requests for contributions to be directed towards the entities that we work with. So directly to Wakulla Springs State Park or Friends of Wakulla Springs or Wakulla Springs Alliance. Contributions supporting those entities benefit us as well. So for those type of things, I would refer to those organizations. As far as directly contributing or becoming involved in the Woodville Karst Plain project, we can be reached via the website. We do have volunteer divers joining us year in and year out and contributing in different ways. Not everyone is committing to 28 hours when they come on the team to be in the water, but people come to us with different skill sets. So photography or geology or other types of things, and our membership is very diverse, and it's open to qualified cave divers, and we look forward to talking to anyone who might be interested.
Someone asked if there are amateur divers or divers not affiliated with your project who dive in this system.
I know that there are recreational cave diving opportunities within Wakulla Springs State Park, particularly or specifically at Emerald Sink and Clearcut Sink, and I know you're looking at options to open up further sites for recreational cave diving. So for trained cave divers that meet the requirements you set, when the weather is cooperating and the visibility is clear, it's really a fabulous cave system to come and enjoy as a recreational cave diver. And I believe there would probably be information on the Wakulla Springs State Park website about diving options at the park, and I would refer those interested in diving to those to that information.
Certainly. Do you ever run into folks who are diving from private property?
I don't really. However, given the close proximity of some of these karst windows from time to time, we have run into swimmers and people in the water at various entrances that are on private property. Some of those encounters are more entertaining than others.
I'm sure it's quite a surprise to those swimmers.
Oh, it is. It is for them too, because they're not expecting anyone. And then, here comes a dive team pops up, and then work keeps moving along. So there could be people diving in the system, with 26 different entrances outside of the park. Most of them, they could be doing that. If they're doing so, dive safely and dive within your limits and enjoy.
Do you notice a difference between surface conditions and the cave underneath? For example, areas under property that is, well-burned sandhill versus housing developments. Do you see a big difference underground related to what is above ground?
Not typically. The rationale being the cave systems are relatively deep. We do notice, for example, in the northern part of the system, like in the Emerald Sinks area, and in the River Sinks area, you tend to get a lot of runoff. So you'll have a lot of inputs into the system in those areas. So you'll see more silt and those things that would collect and be kind of flowed into the karst window or into the sinkhole and then accumulate in the system. So there's certain parts of the system that will have more accumulation of material that may have come in from the surface. And then you'll see different parts of the system where none of that material will be there at all, either because it was never swept in, or it's just such high flow that it's mostly rock and very little sediment. So, but the characteristics of the cave the limestone doesn't appear to be much different below based on what is above until you get around some of the entrances where materials have been swept in.
Oh, we have a question from Slovenia, a region called Karst in Slovenia, by the way. And this person would like to know what rebreather you use.
Currently, and for the past 20 years, we are using what they would call a semi-closed rebreather. The unit is manufactured by Halcyon Manufacturing, and the rebreather came about in exploration of the cave system in the late 1990s because we were really pushing up against the limit of traditional scuba for exploring the distances and depths of the cave system. So not unlike using propulsion, which we had to eventually develop for our own use, the rebreather was in many ways a similar tool. So we worked with Halcyon Manufacturing to develop a version of the rebreather that was suited to our requirements in diving this cave system, and it's worked very well for 20 years. And we have many team members that are trained on it, so we tend to stay with what works and what's the simplest in this type of diving, and it's worked great for us.
Great. We've got quite a few questions about decompression and how long it takes to come up. And I have seen your calculation tables, and I know what a complex endeavor that is, but is there a way that you could kind of in a nutshell describe for folks that are not familiar with deep diving what goes into your air considerations?
Well, I'll try and simplify it because we could have a whole seminar just on decompression.
We certainly could.
I can simply state that in addition to using the rebreather, we have decided as a team over many, many years of trials and testing and using different types of gas mixes, we have decided as a team that we standardize a select number of gas mixes. And the rule of thumb is you will be using lower oxygen and higher helium the deeper you are in the cave. And as you come back towards the surface and do your decompression, you increase the oxygen and you decrease the helium. So on the bottom and the sides of the diving tanks that we're using in some of the videos, you may have noticed numbers. And those numbers represent the maximum depth that cylinder can be breathed. So that's both a safety thing, but it also designates the different types of diving gases we use. And in Wakulla Springs, for example, the general rule of thumb for many, many years was for every 1 minute inside the cave system resulted in 5 minutes of decompression. And that's because of the depth, which is close to 300 feet in the Wakulla cave system. So 1 hour in the Wakulla cave system is 5 hours of decompression. As you move northwest in some of the shallower sections, sometimes that ratio decreases maybe from 1 to 3 instead of 1 to 5. So that's probably the easiest way I can explain it in a short amount of time. But a day in the Wakulla Cave System is a long evening in the Wakulla Basin. So
Good job.
we accept that when we start the dive, and that's kind of how it goes.
There's no changing your mind.
No, there's no changing your mind. Once you're committed, you're in for the long haul, and that's okay.
This one's interesting. If you could pick one technological breakthrough to help with further exploration, what would it be?
Minimizing decompression.
That was well timed, wasn't it?
There's been a lot of technological breakthroughs in recent years. The lighting is getting better. The ability to take some of this high-end video equipment and bigger lights farther in than we could have ever done before. The propulsion, the batteries, that technology is getting smaller and more powerful. So 10 years ago, compared to 10 years ago, many of the pieces of equipment we're using today are much more advanced, especially for the items that really matter a lot to this type of exploration. And the other thing is, if you're capturing video, you're capturing data, and you're diving in a cave, the technology now is automating in such a way that you can capture a lot more on every dive, which is great for us because, we can get more done with fewer people on fewer dives, and it's less impactful than we could 10 years ago. So, but at the same time, technology has to be kind of monitored and managed as part of the dive plan before you get in the water. So there's a bit of a trade-off, more work out of the water, but less work in. So it's a balance.
Oh, fascinating things I'm learning from the comments. Rick Steves on PBS was just in the caves in Slovenia.
Okay.
Fascinating. Lots of people are just fascinated to see what you're doing. We had one question. I would like to hear how you answer this. We like to say that Wakulla is one of the largest and deepest springs in the world. Keeping that qualifier in there because I know there are a lot of different ways to evaluate a spring. But is the Wakulla Cave System considered one of the largest karst systems in the world? And what other systems are comparable in other parts of the world?
Absolutely. The Wakulla Cave System is world renowned. It's considered one of the largest, most impressive cave systems in the world. It is the largest or longest underwater cave system in in the United States. But usually how I sort of sum it up for people is the Wakulla Cave System isn't necessarily the longest. It's not the largest. It's not the deepest. But when you factor all three of those things together, it's far and away those three things more than any other cave system in the world. And it ranks within the top 6 cave systems in the world in terms of current surveyed distance. The top 5 cave systems in the world are all located in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, but they are much shallower. The temperature of those cave systems is a little bit warmer. You don't have the decompression obligation. So I tell my friends in Mexico that the real cave, you can come to Florida and see it. And it's really one of those things that it's unique in all the world, even having the privilege of diving in different countries and seeing their cave systems. Coming home to Wakulla Springs is really something special, and it's an incredible natural resource. Absolutely.
Have you connected to Chips Hole or Indian yet?
We have not physically made those connections. We're working very hard to do so, at least on the Chips Hole side. We're fortunate enough to have a great partnership with the landowners and leaseholders there. So that's something we've been working on for more than 10 years now. It's It's more complicated, as I've mentioned perhaps to you in the past, but we're committed to making that breakthrough. Indian Springs is a little more complicated. Obviously, its proximity to Wakulla Springs is interesting, but from a physical connection, it's been very difficult at Indian. However, dye tracing has confirmed that the water flowing through Indian Spring does end up at Wakulla. So your neighbor is having an impact on the park, but it's something that I think may be more difficult to make a physical connection with than Chips Hole, for example.
Okay, Renee tells me that we've got to only take one more question because we're running out of time.
Okay.
We've really enjoyed your talk, Casey, and I know everyone would love to ask you a million more questions. Okay, this isn't our final question, but is there a resource that you can point everyone to get more answers about diving, about your work? Are you willing to put your email address out there?
Well, they can go to the WKPP website, so wkpp.org. I must concede that the updates are more frequent on the Woodville Karst Plain Project Facebook page. The resources for cave diving, cave exploration in general, Global Underwater Explorers is a great resource for training and diving research and cave diving research. And then there's great organizations like Wakulla Springs Alliance that will have information on the hydrology and the cave systems of the area. So among those, I think they can probably get most of their questions answered and be perhaps a little bit of entertainment in the process.
Great. And I think Renee has shared the Facebook page. All right, so our final question, and I think I'll ask this two ways and you can pick which one you want to answer. What is the most significant change or the most significant discovery you have found in starting this project 30 years ago to today?
Well, the most significant discovery was, at least to date, so we're not finished, but the most significant discovery to date was clearly the connection of the Leon Sinks cave system to the Wakulla cave system in 2007. And that really confirmed what many of us knew all along, but to be able to make those physical connections and share a map means a lot, even if only the water tracing has been done. So there seems to be an added level of validity when you make those physical connections. And as explorers, we really like to make those connections and contribute and explore. For me, the other part of that question is, it's been a 30-year adventure with great people along the way. Hundreds of people have been associated with the team over the years. There'll be many people going forward at some point as well, but being able to share exploration and planning and doing these type of dives in these incredible locations has really been a privilege, and the team represents what that means to explore as a team. So that's been exciting for me. That's been a great accomplishment.
Wow. Well, Casey, thank you. That's been a wonderful presentation and so much information you put out there, and in particular the visuals of this hidden gems that we have right under our feet. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Audience members, hey, thank you all for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Renee, as well. And that's just a small piece, so we look forward to future visits and when we have future discoveries to share. So thank you both for hosting.
Oh, you bet, you bet. And hey, I want to invite everyone over in December, because we have Doug Alderson, who will be presenting The American Alligator. He will explore the alligator that has taken on iconic and mythical status here in Florida. He'll both entertain us and celebrate our favorite reptile, the American alligator. And once again, folks, do consider joining the friends or making a donation. We'd love to have you as part of our group. And everyone, please have a great night and stay safe. Bye-bye.